Another follow-up question, and this is a common one that I get, is that you mentioned that you can do this essentially as many times as you want. Is there any time limit between exchanges? So for instance, in our scenario of selling the property for 2 million, you now need to buy for 1.9 million. You bought for 1.9 million. You were up against the 45-day time clock and you kind of settled on something that you weren't super excited about, but you just wanted to lock it in before the time runs out. And then you rent that out for, let's say, 2-3 months. Oh, bam. An excellent opportunity came up and now you are able to lock that one in. Can you go ahead and now sell the property that you bought and only held for a couple of months and then 1031 exchange again after only holding it for a couple of months, 1031 exchange into a new property? Is that allowed?
It's a common question that we often receive with respect to how long do you actually have to own property for it to qualify for an exchange? And the challenge is that there's no bright line rule in the tax code that clearly sets out what the holding period is. And even if you're to Google what's a holding period for a 1031 exchange, you're not going to find an answer. But if you find an answer, I will tell you not to trust the website because it doesn't exist in the tax code. What the tax code simply states is that the property needs to be owned and held for investment purposes or for productive use in the trade or business for a period of time. But they don't specify what that period of time is. Now, based on some revenue procedures that have come out in recent years, many tax practitioners feel as though 24 months is a safe holding period. More aggressively speaking, 1 year spanned over 2 tax periods might also qualify. But what's most important is the intent. And the intent has to be to acquire that property and hold it strictly for investment purposes. If it appears that it was pre-planned, it doesn't qualify for an exchange. The same applies when you have clients who are perhaps flippers, where they're just buying property, fixing it up and turning around and selling it for profit. Depending on the frequency of their transactions and how much of their income is being derived from these flips, they could be precluded from exchanging because the IRS can deem them to be what's called a dealer of property. Kind of similarly to someone who owns a car dealership, I always like to use this example because it's pretty simple for people to understand. People who own a car dealership, they'll have a fleet of cars on the lot, and some cars might sell right away and other cars might take 6 months to a year. The most important thing is that their intent is never to hold the cars for investment. It's always to resell. It's just a matter of time in which they're able to do so. And so a dealer of property is really treated similarly. Whether they buy the property and they hold it for 6 months, a year, or 2 years, you have to look at what was their intent. Was their intent to ever own and hold it for investment purposes?
I always thought that, and I always run into a lot of them who are telling me, hey, I'm looking for something to 1031 exchange into. That's really a good point.